screen is not gonna help any of us. So what I've given you is the 6 pages of. Oh, good. So what I've given you are the 6 pages of the changes, which have been out and about since, gosh, like early June. This is the 3rd week they've been out. What a lot of you may not have realized, in those 6 pages, there were live links. If you clicked on it, it actually took you to the form itself and showed you the changes in yellow. So here we jump into offer to purchase first. And last year they added the checkbox for will it or will it not include a manufactured home. They've added a second checkbox this year. Will it or will it not include an off-site or separate septic lot, a boat slip, a garage, a parking space, or a storage unit? So those are the 2 major additions, whereas often we didn't have a spot for that stuff. It was under, that blank spot of what will transfer or listed out there, what items that will convey with the house. So, and then just note, if it's a manufactured or septic lot, boat slip, parking garage, or storage unit, you're strongly encouraged to further details in the additional provisions, which we'll cover shortly. But additional provisions now is 2 pages, not 1, and it has this information on it. So, and like I say, I hate that. I feel like I'm teaching behind a wall. They're on the table when you walked in. Yep. And they're already sorted every 3 pages, front and back. So as we scroll down, a couple of changes. Well, some of these are not changes, they're word changes to make it clearer. And the contracts, people always said, well, you're under contract when you deliver the money, and that's not true. You're under contract when it's signed and conveyed back to the other side. So several people are like, oh, I'm not putting it pending until I get money. No, that's not how that works. You're pending once you communicate it back to the other agent and signed. So here, due diligence fee is delivered to the seller on the effective date, not by the effective date. And then you can see initial earnest money is within 5 days of the effective date of this contract. So just a little play on words there that they changed on versus by and within. And you'll see that every single one of these in the bottom right have all been changed for 7 to 22. And as we all know, you have. Yeah, it changed. It was 7 to 22. It's revised 7 to 22, should be 23. You're right. So no, that'll be updated to 23. And you've got 60 days to use both forms without penalty, because you'll have transactions that start in the middle of before the new ones come out.
Without penalty, that means that someone sends us an offer on the old. Normally, I just send it back, say, provide with the new form.
Yeah, penalties could be a commission complaint or a realtor complaint for using an old form after 60 days.
But we can't reject an old offer because that's an offer.
You can't reject it, no.
You can't tell them to fill out a new offer because that's an offer.
It's on the wrong, you could say it's on the wrong forms after September 1st. So here, it's again, talking a little bit about the due diligence money. And this is what I've seen mostly this year is right. This line is, the buyers can get their due diligence money back in the event of a material fact that's not been disclosed. That's what I'm seeing the most of this year. It's like, okay, it's a material fact, I should get that back. Well, some things haven't been discovered until the home inspection phase, and then it becomes a material fact. So there's a reason this wording is here, is that the seller may seek any remedies allowed for dishonored funds, meaning funds that you didn't deliver. So if you didn't deliver the due diligence on the effective date, or you didn't do the earnest money within 5 days of the effective date, they can seek any remedy allowed for that. You've got the outline of the changes. So you're looking at page 1, probably item 3. And I'm looking at the actual contract OTP itself up here. And then the note box has been highlighted and changed. If the parties agree that the buyer will pay for any fee or deposit described by electronic or wire transfer, then the seller agrees to cooperate with that. What happened was Venmo, PayPal, all those things happened, Zelle, all those things happened last year. They added those electronic forms of payment last year. As technology changed, the form had to change. Well, what happened was folks said, well, I don't have that account. I'm not doing it. Well, this is saying that, yes, the buyer will pay for those. Any initiation fees to open any of those means. However, the seller agrees to open those means. So, yes.
So we all have sellers that are electronically challenged. I still see that being an issue with some sellers.
Probably.
I just got Venmo myself like 2 weeks ago. I sent my first Venmo today.
I have yet to have them.
I mean, yeah, it concerned me a little bit about PayPal. I was an idiot.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Yeah,
Suggestion,
yep.
you can always send a memo to the buyer from the seller. It says, this is not a counter offer, but the seller would find your offer more appealing if you could change it from Venmo to check or that.
I agree.
Just like some folks don't e-sign, we all know that. Just know that if we accept an offer this way, and you may say the terms are great, except for this line. And due to they're not, that's not their thing.
Jason, do you suggest that if that comes up, will we strike that note? Strike through, have all parties initially?
You can do a strike through on page 1, yes, if they want to change method of payment, that's fine. You don't have to do a whole new thing, but just a page 1 is fine. So then under E for this line, earnest money will be credited to the buyer at closing or dispersed as required by this contract. So this came up today in Hillsborough at the team meeting. Earnest money, as we all know, some folks wanted to say, well, you're terminating, I'm going to keep it. Or I'm going to hold it up at that attorney's office and you can go to court and blah, 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 blah. It's being dispersed per this contract. So if you cancel during due diligence and earnest money is refundable, then per this contract, earnest money is refundable. So
Oh, really?
the seller can't create obstacles for someone. So escrow agent, that used to say settlement agent. And I know we talked about this earlier. Sometimes there's not escrow money while we're on this line F. So if there's no escrow money, there's not an escrow agent. What I would put in there myself, I would say 0 escrow settlement attorney. A settlement agent is, John Smith. That's what I would personally put. So.
And Jason, one thing we didn't bring up earlier today is that situation with some firms, because some firms, very few, still hold furniture.
Oh, sure.
And that's what we go to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, a handful still have trust accounts, even though they're sticky subjects. So line G, if you look, the parties further acknowledge that the effectiveness of this contract is not contingent upon the buyer's payment of earnest money deposit or due diligence fee. So again, reiterates, because once it's signed and communicated, you're under contract. Due diligence is deliverable. Even though you've not received it yet, the parties acknowledge the effectiveness of this contract is not contingent upon monies.
Of course, you can hold the offer from being signed until you receive the due diligence deposit.
You could, technically. See paragraph 1D for seller's remedy, and we just went over what was 1D. Seller may seek all remedies available, right? That's what 1D is. For dishonored funds, like a bad check or XYZ. Oh, look, revised 723-22. Look, they caught it. So moving on to page 3, you'll see these little changes here. This is just because they've had to add lines. It's no longer K, this is L. Nothing to cover there. Here, this is a hot topic, number on page 4, exercise equipment. The pandemic brought about all these exercise equipments that's bolted to the wall. Like the magic wall of exercise, and you could watch videos from anywhere and you could be in a yoga class in 5 seconds. Well, that's bolted to the house. It's a part of the house. It's attached. I brought up one to legal. That's one in this room. Is that ice maker back there? It's in the cabinet line. There's a gap in the cabinet line, although that's on wheels with a plug. So I expect to see ice maker within a cabinet line, a part of things that convey with the house. So exercise equipment and devices that are attached are now part of homes.
They still haven't put refrigerator.
Nope, because it's personal property. Nope. Going on. This is another one. Shall means you must, not. So I guess they just said that's too gray. So seller shall, that means they must. So they made it must repair any damage caused by the removal of any items. Meaning when you remove something after you move out, you can't just leave it shoddy and you have to repair it. And any items excluded from the above list will be in a good workmanlike manner. Seller to notify buyer upon completion of such repairs and provide the buyer with documentation thereof, if any. So again, it's how you leave the condition of the home when you remove any of those items that, so you couldn't take down the exercise equipment on the wall that didn't convey and leave all the holes, basically. So then buyers advised to consider attaching the additional provisions addendum if the buyer has specific requests on how any repairs should be completed. So if you want to specifically say, I want the ceiling around grandma's chandelier, whatever, that needs to be on additional provisions. So.
Put that like holes in the wall, like it might have a big picture or something.
You can put that, I would put it on provision, additional provisions.
Yeah, even like it's regular nail holes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If you want to be that specific, that's where it goes.
Yeah.
So, what 6 zoning, comma, government regulation, comma, and government compliance. So it's not, they've added government compliance and had to make it, the commas there. Zoning, government regulation, and government compliance, the investigation of current proposed zoning or other government regulation that may affect the buyer's intended use of the property. Adjacent land uses, planned or proposed road construction, school attendance zones, and investigation of whether the property is in violation of any law, ordinance, permit, or government regulation that is outlined in 8H. So what's happening here is if there are plans down the road for something, you have to disclose that as a material fact. So as part of that, any investigation, even if it's going to happen, has to be shared.
Jason, does that also mean that unpermitted space? I mean, it doesn't say unpermitted, but it says.
Well, you, in violation of any law, ordinance, or permit, yeah, that would go for that.
Unpermitted, Telling us about it, obviously.
Correct.
We should be closing that.
Yep. And it's any government regulation or government compliance. So that's why it's there.
Keeping to, for future, figure back, whatever, where would I go to find that? And what are the different things that still look
Oh, that's a big one, Keenan.
We're talking about
Yeah,
that.
well, I'll talk.
Yeah, there, each city and each county has its own place to find it.
All right.
So like you can, it's usually in zoning, or building permits. If you,
Yeah.
so, planning and zoning is usually where it is. And it's kind of like deeds and kind of like plats and register deeds and all those other things. Every little city and town and zone has their own search engine capability. So they, may not, how to look it up in Guilford is not the same how to look it up in Alamance. So.
Don't get it started on that.
Because you have to drive out there and look. You just gotta drive out there and look.
Your second row.
Thanks for bathroom. Just refer it all up.
Hey, so scooting on to number 8, page 8. Here's a biggie that they've added a complete box. And again, red box, red flag. If a lead-based paint disclosure is required, but not given to buyer prior to seller's acceptance, the buyer may not be obligated to purchase the property under the contract, under federal law. So you may not be able to enforce a contract if that information is not shared. So that's,
They may be able to get their due diligence.
that's
Agents to come put the disclosure.
a biggie.
That's a big.
Just make sure it's up when.
The material back.
Yeah.
Did y'all hear that?
A lot of agents done.
If it's not an enforceable contract, then maybe entitled to get their due diligence back too.
Here's another biggie under 7E. Leases, short-term and long-term. There's a difference, right? Talking about Airbnbs and VRBOs and all this other stuff. The lease checkbox, which we learned we added checkboxes last year. Checkboxes, is this property is or is not subject to a lease? If the property is subject to a lease, the buyer and seller should include either the rental income investment property provision in the additional provisions addendum, which again has been revised to add this. That's why additional provisions 2 pages. That or the vacation rental addendum should be attached with this offer. 8A triple I. If a seller is not a foreign person, as defined by Foreign Investment and Real Property Tax Act, seller shall also provide to the closing attorney a non-foreign status certification. So they used to say an affidavit. Certification would be an ID. An affidavit's not an ID. So they lessened that criteria and allowed a different method. In the event the seller does not provide that certification, blah, 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 blah. Oh, good title, legal access. I gotta love this. Don't that look fun? Big and yellow right there. School bus yellow. Good title. We've had this recently where the seller did not have good title they discovered some stuff. So the seller shall, meaning must, execute and deliver a general warranty deed for the property no later than settlement date, which shall convey fee simple marketable insurable title without exceptions for mechanics liens, lease pendants, monetary liens, and judgments. Real scenario. A owner of a home embezzled $200,000 from their employer, was terminated. They didn't press charges. However, they took a lien out on their house in a court judgment. They went to sell the house 7 years later. And all of a sudden, there's a $200,000 lien on the house. It's there. So, they could not deliver clean title to the home without, you had to pay that person. He had court documents proving he was owed that money. And seller said that SOB and other things will not see 1 red cent. And here we are. So he kept the house, but what did he also have to do?
Fund the due diligence.
Pay every single red cent the buyer was out of pocket. Every inspection, every water test, every whatever they could come up with. So
He's like, just add it to the other one.
liens on the property are, if they can't provide title, it's going to go with it, even a monetary lien or a court judgment on the property. So you can see the other things are struck through there. Jumping down, government compliance, H. It is a condition of this contract that property be conveyed free of any material violation of law, ordinance, permit, or government regulation, including but not limited those relating to building, stormwater, impervious surface, EPA, and zoning. Let's go back to what we were talking about earlier. unpermitted space, unless the seller has specifically disclosed such violations prior to the effective date. If a violation is discovered and identified after the date and prior to closing, the seller may cure those violations. Unless otherwise agreed, the seller does not cure the violations prior to closing, then the buyer may choose to accept the violation and proceed to settlement or terminate and receive a refund of earnest and due diligence. Receive a refund.
So it's not specific to any of the costs, just for the utility.
I bet you can get the cost too if you wanted to.
But they didn't have to,
They probably will next year.
right?
So,
They gotta make it to 18 pages, something.
hey, so here's another biggie at, remember the line that had the deed is made out to blank? Now it says this deed is to be made out to buyer, a corporation, LLC, or other business entity which buyer is the sole owner or shareholder, a trust for which the buyer is beneficiary, any relative of buyer and or other, insert a name only. So now that 3 blank lines is now insert a name. And all these little letters are just extensions because they had to change some of the names.
I guess it's just basing that on the name on the contract.
Yep,
Is-
not always the right thing. So possession, here's another biggie. There are new buyer possession and seller possessions that we'll cover in a sec. So possession, including all means of access to the property, 13. And transferable amenities and services, keys to include mailbox keys. I guess folks were moving out and not turning in their mailbox key. What's happening is all the new developments are having the mailboxes centrally at the front, much like apartment communities, right? To save the mail folks from having to drive to every house. Folks are moving out and not giving the keys. And how much is a key? A couple $100. So now it says you can't keep that key, you have to turn it over.
It's probably they don't have full fobs or keys in that as well.
Well, it does says and transferable amenities. So it is full fobs and everything else. So possession is subject to the right of tenants. Parties should either attach, oh my gosh, we see the additional provisions again. And where it says consider attaching it, that's not an option. It says, they should attach it.
That 2-page additional provision is going to be 17 and 18.
So this is the entire agreement recordation. This agreement or any memorandum thereof shall not be recorded without written consent of the buyer and seller. So,
Offers being recorded.
dum, dum, dum. Remedies, breach by the buyer. Provided, let me start at a sentence. In the event of material breach of this contract by the buyer, the seller is entitled to any earnest money. Remember, we talked about earnest monies paid out by this contract. So here we go. The payment of any earnest money deposit and any due diligence fee to seller without regard to their respective amounts, including zero, together shall serve as liquidated damages and as the seller's sole and exclusive remedy for such breach. So that's how they get paid if there's a breach. Provided that such liquidated damage shall not limit the seller's rights under paragraph 4 for the damage to a property, as well as seller's right under paragraph 1 for dishonored funds. So if they stop payment on a check and they still owe the funds, so. It's acknowledged at parties that the amount of the liquidated damage is compensatory and not punitive. So basically that's what that's saying is those are the remedies for that, but that's not the limit of the remedies. Especially when it comes to dishonored funds. Attorney's fees. If legal proceedings are brought by buyer or seller against the other to collect EMD, DD or DD cost, the parties agree that a party shall be entitled to recover the reasonable attorney's fees permitted under general statute. And if applicable, general statute, this one for dishonored funds. So clearly there's been funds that have been dishonored from stop payments or not having funds to. So what they can do is not only go after the funds themselves, but the cost it encompass to get those funds. So have to pay for the attorney as well. Okay, this offer shall become binding on the effective date, and the date is what you put in this box. Unless specifically provided otherwise. Buyer's failure to timely deliver any fee, deposit, or other payment provided shall not prevent this offer from becoming binding, provided that any such failure shall give the seller certain rights to terminate the contract as described. I'm surprised we stayed at 17 pages, but I'm excited we did. Okay, that's it. So questions on that one? There's mud. Seller possession after closing, they've added a form. They've added guidelines for completing, they've just updated the changes we just made. They've added a new form, which is guidelines for completing buyer possession. And there was already, so here's the seller possession after closing. So they've added, not you are advised to confirm, it says confirm with any insurance professional, the terms of coverage. Oh, yeah, sorry. What are you thinking?
For the saving grace.
Shake behind your name.
Yeah, so it's not you are advised to confirm with an insurance, it's now you have to confirm with insurance. Also, they've added seek legal counsel and consult with any lender should the parties wish to make any changes after the closing. Some loans will not allow you to rent. It has to be the person on the loan has to be the inhabitant within so many days. So that could be an issue, and likewise, it could be an insurance issue. That's why they've added that. They've added the term of possession, seller may remain in possession of the property until 5 p.m. on date, or for a period of X days after closing on the last day of possession. Here's the other thing, they've struck out this whole, a lot of appliances and maintenance and repair and blah, 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 blah. So seller shall maintain the property in its same condition at closing and make no changes to the property, decorating or otherwise without written consent. In the event that the property is not so maintained by the seller, seller shall pay all costs to restore the property back to its condition at closing. Pretty simple. They took out all that ambiguity, all that shall not and possession and should not and shall and whatever. If seller does not timely vacate, the buyer shall be entitled to seek eviction. And seller shall pay. Shall pay. Buyer a fee of blank per day. So make sure that this is completed. For each day, the seller remains in possession from the end of the term until seller vacates or is evicted. Sellers shall be bound by all other terms of this agreement until possession is delivered to the buyer. Here's the other clarity around it. Utilities, lawn maintenance, trash, all during this term, the seller is responsible for lawn and trash removal. They were saying, okay, I'm still operating it, but I'm your tenant, so now you're really responsible for the landscaping and trash, even though I'm still renting it. Removal of seller's property. By the date of possession is made available to the buyer, the seller shall remove all garbage and debris from the property, as well as all of seller's personal property, which is not a part of the purchase. And I do believe that is it for that one. Additional provisions. I know you've been dying to see this. It's 3 pages. I lied to you. Rental income. Seller authorizes and directs any property management company and any attorney who currently represents or who has previously represented the seller to release to the buyer, their buyer's agents, the representative, closing attorney, or lender true and accurate copies of the above items, as well as the rent roll and to include property address, amount, current monthly rent, amount of security deposit, and all past due rent amounts. So what was happening was they were inflating their numbers and saying that it earned more than it did, vice versa, to get more out of the money, out of the purchase price. So again, it's authorizing any property management company to share that info. Seller shall deliver assignment of any lease at or before closing unless the lease does not permit assignment. So again, if you're doing income rental investment properties, I would, always ask for those up front. You never want surprises. The name, address, telephone number, and email of any property manager, property management company, much like HOA and the OTP, you need to know who the property management company is. All means of access to the property other than those in tenant's possession, all keys, including security codes, garage door openers, electronic devices, must be delivered at closing. Yes,
What's it like not property management?
it just, you have to provide the info.
Okay.
7 is a whole new one. Offsite and or separate septic lot, boat, garage, slip, parking space, storage unit. So we talked about that. Some condos have that separate unit, you can buy the separate parking garage or whatever. Seller of the property shall include the following: deeded lease, seller owned, HOA owned, whatever it is, write it in there. Seller agrees to execute any additional documents if necessary at their expense to complete the transfer of that.
There's few subdivisions that have separate septic.
Yep. Vacation rental addendum. I don't know how much you all do for that one. There's several investors are written in the office. And here's the thing, this has been added, reservations with an online vendor also must be disclosed, because all of a sudden you'll have someone bought it and you don't know if someone's got it for that weekend because no one told them. Rental manager info, their contact info, the rental manager, buyer and seller agree that the buyer have the option to retain that company management other than rental manager. But if the buyer does not sign a property management agreement with that rental manager prior to settlement, buyer agrees to give the seller credit of X at closing for whatever's left, or if there's a fee there for breaking that. I know not all of us do vacation rentals. Vacant land and lots, same changes on the OTP. They just encompass the same stuff. I'm not going to go into that one. Exclusive right to sell. Listed houses, it's 13 pages.
Right to sell is 13.
Page 1, no changes. Yay!
Page 2, they added the exercise equipment we talked about earlier on the OTP. They're changing letters because of the extension.
Actually, there wasn't as many changes in this than I thought it would be. But
There are not. Here's the big one. Under seller representations, describe any, and it comes from that change of lien holders. So describe any known potential or pending dispute, violation, or litigation that involves or affects the seller, the owners association, or the property. Then another check mark for G, seller is or is not a foreign person, which we talked about earlier on the OTP, for as identified by the Foreign Investment Real Property Tax, if they're not a foreign person as defined by FERC-PTA. Seller agrees to provide the closing attorney with a non-foreign status affidavit. And they acknowledge that their withholding is provided by the IRS code. Seller not provided non-foreign status affidavit.
Can I say, I just recently had an HOA or the agent asked for proof that there were no violations on the HOA.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've got.
Yeah, because it goes with the land, right? It goes with it, right? So if there was a violation, it would kind of,
Or any past violation.
so this one, offsite separate lot, boat slip garage, this is again, back to the additional provisions, they've added it to the listing agreement. And also any government compliance, seller warrants that the property is not in any violation of law, ordinance, permit, or government regulation, including not limited to those relating to building, stormwater, impervious surface,
So in other words,
environmental protection zoning, except for X.
wait a minute, does that mean like a detached garage, because it's on site, you don't have to put it there, or storage? I'm confused.
Is offsite, a detached is onsite.
Same with the storage shed. So who would have a storage shed off?
Usually that's in a HOA community or something like that, like a,
Okay.
some of them have centralized
So if it's on-
storage. Yeah, it's not, yeah, like a boat slip. So there might be a boat slip, 2 miles down the road in the marina that goes with a house, but not necessarily in the yard on front of the lake.
The house is being built on Serendipity down in Brand, have a garage off their main property. I got a good question. So that part where you're talking about buildings, the permitting and stuff. So the seller, it makes them have to disclose that, even if they don't want to. They
It-
have to disclose it. I mean, we have to. disclose it.
Yes, it
You know,
does.
there's a lot of-
Yes,
Okay, so now they have to,
yes.
whether they want.
Can they use no representation?
Can they say they're not gonna disclose it? Still,
We don't know, like, what if they don't know?
I mean, some people may not know based upon when they purchased it or
Yeah.
something, but I mean,
Kind of goes back to earlier than two, if during the due diligence period, they find the material fact that wasn't disclosed,
they may have to give all the monies back.
so. And of course, then they've got to prove that the seller knew it, I guess, but
Yeah.
So do you just leave it blank or do you just put like an A in there?
If there's not an outside. anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. because they're warranting the property is not in violation of any of those, so. Seller understands that if lead-based paint disclosure is required but not given to the buyer prior to acceptance of any offer, they may be obligated to purchase, may not be obligated to purchase the property. So again, that same thing we talked about in the OTP is in the listing agreement. And is that, I think that might be it. Yeah, that's it. Okay,
So can you ask a question?
sure.
When we talk about material facts, I'm just curious, are people putting the material facts that they need to be disclosing in the MLS? Or how are most people handling those? I'm curious.
So material facts should be in agent comments or either in an attachment on, you can add as an attachment, like a RPD or something like that, like a info sheet on the house. That's how I've seen most of them are in agent comments.
The listing agents, like, they've seen cracks in the foundation.
Yeah.
Or they'll have like a separate PDF that.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of that since people finally took their classes before June 10th, which talked about material facts this year, right? The big thing is that, the next thing we're seeing a lot of is, let me tell you, folks, getting a home inspection and it falling through and them terminating, but then not updating the RPD.
Oh, the real estate commission is really.
Are not, then the agent knows about it and then not updating comments.
Well, now an agent can't update.
No,
they can disclose it.
yeah, they can disclose it.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at it, I'm not looking at it.
Yeah, you can't feign ignorance to,
And that was actually a real estate commission bulletin.
Yeah, what if the
It
buyer
was-
doesn't, oh, it's fire or it's
May not-
there, it's
Fairly
there.
recent.
So here's the thing, we just finished up a commission case. It's good that I can talk about these after the fact. Where someone terminated. And they they did not give us the inspection report. However, they said, we are terminating because of X, Y, and Z, which were material facts. One was a roof leak, one was something that was questionable. So what the agent did and myself separately, we actually contacted the commission and said, hey, said agent didn't give us proof of this, but they said this is why. And the commission said, why are you contacting me? This is a material fact, whether you know it or not, you've been told it. So you have to disclose it.
So it doesn't matter who it comes from.
No matter where it comes from, you have to disclose it.
And on that same topic, if something's, even though something has been fixed.
You
it
have
still
to
has be
disclose it,
disclosed.
yes.
Okay.
So seller became furious. Why are you disclosing something you don't know the truth about? Well, we said, here's what they said. They said you had a roof leak. We didn't see the leak. We didn't see the inspection report. We were just told you had one. It's more problems that they want to take on. So they checked it out and they did have a minor leakage something. And they said, well, now it's fixed. You don't have to. No, that's not how that works. So 18 times in your real estate manual, material facts are disclosed, spoken about. So we did win that case, FYI. Because we did what the commission told us we should do. Buyer agency, there is no longer a date right here. It's just between parties, the firm and said person.
So if there's like a crack in the seller fixed it, we would have to disclose in the MLS that there was a crack window in the seller fixed it.
I would just say glass replaced in X.
Well, how far back do we have to go? on that?
I mean, as far as you would know, I mean, but the reason being is that is not the original glass to the house or the window. So if that became a problem, then they could come back on that glass.
So
So
what if you look back at an old RFP and it said so-and-so, heat exchange? I don't know, something on the old RPD. We have to go back, even though that was before we were involved with it.
Yep.
We are circling all the RDBs.
My answer would be yes.
So don't look at old.
I mean, that's, once you find out something, you can't keep it as an agent. Like you can't,
Oh, I know.
I mean, that's the way it rolls.
So you don't look at it.
Hey, I'll throw out there,
Then inspection reports, because if they send it to you, you're obligated.
but what if the commission says, did you have access to that and you didn't read it and you should have known as an agent?
So we are required to go back and look at old RPD.
I mean, if you have access to information on a home, you should research it because you can't
So
you can't feign ignorance in essence.
if a buyer does an inspection but refuses to give a copy of that inspection report to us, can we call the inspector ourselves and say, hey, can you tell me what material facts might have been on that? They can't give it to you.
They're not allowed. They shouldn't,
Hired by the buyer.
Okay.
unless the buyer is whoever paid for it, said
Yeah.
they release.
Can you upload the previous home inspection to the MLS?
You can. What I would recommend, if they shared it with you, I would recommend a minimum is previous home inspection available upon request.
Does that cover the RPD?
That's another, it's another case we just won. We had an inspection upon request comment and the agent didn't ask for it. And then they had all these problems that they were upset about. And we're like, well, we told you there was one available. And And you would have known every single problem off of that. So then it's like, well, we made it available, but we also, did we disclose it saying it was available or, so we did.
Or y'all we closed it at, it's in the MLS, in agent report,
Mhm.
available upon request.
Yep.
So was that?
I would say if there's a big old something in the report, I would specifically call it out. I wouldn't just say available upon request and say there's a roof leak. You know what I mean? I mean, I would say for the home inspection, further, those crazy little items like a light switch here and a this, that, and I mean, I wouldn't say that's got to be listed in the MLS. I would say,
Major, like,
yeah, if I would say there was a leak and, that's what I would gauge.
so the home inspection does not trump there.
It does not. But also it does not, a home inspection trumps it for you as an agent. Because you have knowledge of different knowledge than the seller that filled it out.
But the seller refuses to update the RPD, but you uploaded the home inspection. And
You're better.
you're.
In the eyes of the commission, you're better. I mean, until a case is heard and I mean, it's,
Well, this is not a.
oh yeah, I know. Look, I got 45 cases. I mean, ish at any given time.
Jason, it blows my mind how many agents don't look at payment for marks.
Oh yeah.
Oh, my God.
They call you, yeah.
That's one of the reasons, one of the MLSs, it does not hide it behind a click.
Yeah.
It's already there. So FYI. Hey, buyer's agency, buyers represent that as of the date, not the commencement of it, as of the date. And then the term is now down as the date under number 3. And here. Biggie. Per federal, that's Uncle Sam. A buyer obtaining a VA loan is not permitted to pay a brokerage fee or commission in connection with the services of a buyer agent. Though use of a buyer agent is permitted, firm may still seek compensation pursuant to paragraph 4BI if buyer is seeking a VA loan. So the seller has to pay that agent. The client of a VA, buyer of a VA, is not allowed per federal to pay a buyer's agent. So don't be asking them for money. That's why you always put as stated in the MLS, don't put what your fee is.
No, it goes back to defending your commission. I've explained this before because I had in my buyer's agreement what my fee is. And I explained very thoroughly to buyers that if the seller was offering less than this fee, then that difference, if I cannot get it from the seller, is part of your closing costs. And they have a very good understanding about that. Until I find out that there was a VA loan and then that can't be done, you're screwed.
Yep, you are.
You just have to go chomp, chomp, chomp. That fee's good.
Page 5, 16. This is the entire agreement. Changes, there is no changes. This is the entire agreement. Effective date and changes. This agreement will become binding on the effective date. Again, the date is what the one we enter. The date of the last one, the date the last one buyer and firm signs this agreement and such signing is communicated to the other party. So you've got folks saying, well, I had a buyer's agency here and I signed one here. It's as of the date of the last one that was signed is where this is. No change of any of the terms of this agreement shall be valid, binding upon the parties or entitled to enforcement unless such change has first been reduced to writing and agreed to and signed by both buyer and firm. And that's it. On that one. New form, agreement and bill of sale for personal property. Don't you love this one? What? don't muddy up all that stuff buying a couch. So there is now a form that says the agreement and bill of sale for personal property. The seller is this, the buyer is that, with real property at this address. The seller, for the sum of X, agrees to sell and transfer to buyer, free and clear of all claims, liens, encumbrances, any and all rights, interests in the following personal property on these 3 lines.
So we can sell the dog.
Now you can. So there you go. You got a new form.
But they don't give you much space to put much in there.
Might have to say, see attached. and put on.
Don't be buying all that stuff.
Additional provisions. See additional provisions.
Termination, our favorite word. This form is for use by the buyer to notify the seller they are unilaterally terminating. That means this is over. Buyer's name, seller's name, address name. What they've added is the property fails to satisfy the government compliance condition in the contract, which we talked about. Also, they've added buyer gives this notice of termination and alleges that seller has breached the contract. The buyer is strongly advised to seek legal counsel before checking this box and signing this particular termination. Also, they've added buyer gives this notice of termination after the expiration of due diligence without providing a reason. The buyer is strongly advised to seek legal counsel before checking this box and signing this termination.
Okay, so I have some questions. If you only have a due diligence and no earnest money, does it matter when you terminate?
It does not.
It does not? You don't need the seller's signature to terminate, right?
Nope.
Why is the attorneys are requested?
You notifying them
Give
unilaterally.
them notice, them backing out.
Uni means one,
Don't even have to have a reason, that's why.
correct? And how is earnest money paid out? Per the terms of this contract. So there's not question about earnest money. It's, if it's after the due diligence date, it gets paid to, half of it goes to the seller and half goes to firm or agent.
Jason, that reminds
Is
me
that
about the
standard language?
conversation this morning
Nice.
Realtors don't read.
on the escrow agent. So that section, you know, not all attorneys hold earnest money. Oh, you brought that up. over.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Sorry.
So, termination, same thing for vacant lot and land. Notice termination of contract by notice to buyer from seller. When does the seller terminate? Unilateral terminating. They give this notice, they allege the buyer is breached. Strongly advised to seek legal counsel. Seller gives notice of termination without providing a reason. Strongly advised to seek legal counsel because you could be sued for execution.
They're gonna keep those highlighted.
I wish. I wish.
We should get our own, you're saying.
Yep. And agency, I got 2 more for you and we're done. The new construction, basically the same ones we just covered, you know, they're kind of agency renewal and amendment. The only changes here is the other terms and conditions of the agreement, including any previous amendments to the agreement, is still in full effect and force. So if you've got,
Pull that up, please.
yeah, if you got additional things you've added in, like if you in your initial agreement wrote up 45 days within showing you'll do this and that, and you know, you'll pay a 0.5% of my fee if it's not there. If you got those in the original, all that stuff conveys as well in full force and effect, is all that's saying. Yes,
If you send us this and it has links to the actual forms that are highlighted, we can save those forms that are already highlighted, right? And then we can just print them out ourselves. You should have it.
yeah, you have it already, but we can send it again. Referral agreement. Referral agreement. This one's a biggie. I know y'all get referrals and y'all call me and ask me all the time. Compensation. Percent of monetary, you put in 25%, 30%, 40%, whatever your referral fee is, it doesn't matter to us. Received by receiving firm as listing agent for a closing on the sale of prospect's property occurring on or before a date. If the prospect closes and sells more than one property prior to the end date, referring firm is paid on each transaction. It's not a one and done. It depends on the date. Unless otherwise provided. So there's a spot for you to put other. So in the other, I would put, if more than one property is purchased, blah, 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 blah. You can't do some people say, well, they bought 5 properties and I referred them to you. I want all those other 4. Well, now there's been this gray area until today. So you put an end date on it and that's when.
Could you also put like in other, for 3 transactions?
Yep.
number of Transactions.
Yep.
Instead of the date.
Yep, and put all that under other. This referral for the next 5 transactions with this person or whatever.
I have a referral agreement signed for 1 year. Anything closed during that 1 year. Have to
You-
identify the property.
You should, if it's for 1 year, it's everyone they buy during that year.
It wouldn't have to identify property.
Yeah, not specific properties.
You'd have to keep in touch with them early.
Well, they are family, so they see them,
Again, you have to keep in touch with them early.
but we're the one paying the pearl.
That on.
Hey, they're my best guess.
Buyers.
Sir, buyers and sellers both, yes. Deed, new construction, rarely do we use a North Carolina form on new construction. Most of the builders have their own. Unless they're specific builders working with agents rather than like a chain. The last blank about deed, remember we talked about the change in deed on the original offer to purchase. This is where the deed is on the deed blank is on the offer to purchase for a new construction. Questions? Y'all are legal and ready to go. So I'm working with Mary and Daniel to get those uploaded as soon after July 1st as we can. My goal is to have them to you before the 15th. So, Yeah. Hey, all you online people, we love you. Thank you. Appreciate y'all. Is that clear as mud? Does that help? Oh, yeah, she said, I've been in class. I got here at
People, he's like, so, I love that shirt, love it.
Target.
I love Target.
I've gotten it's been nonstop.
You have been busy, you've been on vacation, and, it looks like y'all had a nice time. But
Oh,
anyway,
Christina Aguilera.
where'd y'all go?
So we had a